All right. Well, hi again. It's been so long, hasn't it? My name is Michael Stade, and I'm going to be moderating a panel. I work for Learn Capital. We constantly look at small emerging companies in the education space, many companies in higher education. And I've been honored to be involved with several conference circuits, Sloan C. Merlot, being the most recent, to help them organize a kind of content and mobilize the startup community so that you guys get exposure to some of the new emerging companies. And these are some of the most exciting of the many applicants that we had to our Launchpad program here. I think we should just start actually just by introducing yourselves and introducing your organizations. In particular, if you could explain how you are not a gremlin and why people should care when they are kind of, they instinctively are like, oh, yet another one, right? Yeah. Do you want to start down there?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Ridvan Aliyu. I am the CEO of EDU On Go. And what we do is, it ties up a lot with the slides that Michael was showing you earlier. EDU On Go believes that every teacher has some form of entrepreneurship on themselves. If you've got something to share with the world, or if you'd like to launch your own online academy, EDU On Go provides the tools for you to do that. So whether you are an individual subject matter expert or a group of professional trainers, you can literally launch your own online academy under your own brand with your own domain and start making money. So if you were to compare that with some of the companies that Michael put on the slides, like Udemy, Coursera, and Creative Live, is EDU On Go stands at a different level where you actually can create your own Udemy. You can create your own marketplace, either by yourself or together with your colleagues, and share knowledge with the world. So we do provide the technology and the tools for you to run an online school, if you can believe that. You don't have to be now an established institution or a higher organization that has access to such amazing tools to literally run your online academy. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. We provide the tools for anyone to launch their own online academy.
Can we share this one? Go for it. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Sowards. I'm the founder and CEO of USEED. We believe that for education to evolve, we have to evolve the way education is funded. Right now, the fundraising mechanism behind education rewards the oldest and most established players, as I'm sure many of you are painfully aware of. We provide universities with their own crowdfunding platform, and then we teach their students and faculty how to succeed on it so that they can go to the crowd to fund the innovators, the entrepreneurs, and the change makers on their campus. How we are not a gremlin? Look, like most idealistic millennials who want to change the world, we came into education with a lot of big ideas about how we could create a lot more value for students. And I think we learned two things that have really transformed the way that we work with our partners. Number one, we learned that education is an ecosystem, it's not a market. It's important for everyone to win. It's important for students to win, but it's also important for staff to win. It's important for faculty to win. And it is possible. Game theory is a beautiful thing, and it's amazing what happens when you can create wins for everyone. I think the second thing we learned is we are not here to disrupt. We're not here to revolutionize anything. You all are revolutionizing education every day. The advances in pedagogy are just mind-boggling, especially in the last 10 years. What we see is a real need for partners, for startups, for nonprofits, for foundations who want to partner with institutions in evolving education. It's an iterative process, it's adaptive a process. Goodness knows the landscape is changing for everyone so quickly. And so what we have learned about not being a gremlin is we're here to adapt. We're here to learn from, we're here to share, We want to be a research organization. We want to benefit from the research mindset of our customer.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, guys. My name is Kiran Kamiti. I'm the founder and CEO of Collage. We're a Silicon Valley company. Our mission is to make sure that anybody can create videos just like they can create documents today. Creation of videos doesn't have to be limited to the expert. So essentially, what we are trying to do is to democratize rich content creation. When I say videos, I mean not just video camera captures, but screen captures, drawings, and everything that allows you to capture and create rich content. So if you look at what the lecture capture tools of today allow you to do, they're hardware-based, they're very bulky. They're designed for, with 10, 20 years, previous technology in mind, essentially. If you look at other tools that let you create videos, such as Camtasia, I don't want to take names, but I have to in this case, they're designed for the expert user. They're very complex to use. So our goal is to create something easy that anybody with no technical knowledge can use to quickly create rich content that doesn't require bulky hardware and essentially democratize content creation as we know it. And that's exactly what Collage does today. So come by our booth, check it out.
Hi, my name is Alex Selkirk, and I'm from Ponder. And we are an instructional tool. We actually help scaffold student critical thinking in a way that is scalable for your instructors to review and manage. Traditionally, the way that teachers review student critical thinking is through written assignments. But the trouble is that written assignments are one of the most time-intensive activities for your instructors. And while that's an important part of reviewing a longer, more substantive piece of writing, in terms of helping your students practice what it means to critique and review other written works and video, written assignments are a bottleneck. And so with Ponder, we've broken apart the idea generation piece of your students' thinking from the writing, which makes it possible to just work much more closely with your students. In terms of learning, or how, I don't know, in terms of how we're not a gremlin, I guess, we've had an amazing few years working with our instructors to iterate what Ponder does and how it supports you guys. We would be useless without your instructors. That said, what we're trying to do is really amplify the impact and help you guys see that impact and measure it, and help your students build the 21st century skills they need to succeed in the workplace. So hopefully we're not, that doesn't sound like a gremlin. But.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm from ApprenNet. And we set out to answer a simple but not so simple question, I guess. That is, how do you bring the components of a live classroom that make the live classroom so magical into an online environment? And then, so the next follow-up is, what are those components? And the components as we see them, and we're educators, so we saw this in our classroom of what made our live classroom so effective, with the ability for students to practice skills, so to role play, practice skills, learn by doing. The second part is, there's three, is to learn from their peers. So that live interaction with their peers, if they're observing each other, giving them feedback, and fostering just constructive conversations and feedback. And the third was access to experts, where the students have now gotten a chance to practice skills, engage with each other about that, observe each other, give and get feedback, and then get to see experts with years of wisdom, whether it's yourself as professors or outside experts, demonstrate that same skill and also provide feedback to the students. So those are the three components that we found made live classrooms so powerful. And the question we tried to solve was, how can we bring that into the online environment? And so the National Science Foundation gave us a grant to work on that about 2.5 years ago for legal education. So we're lawyers and law professors. And we built this platform, and now it's being used by a number of different disciplines. And it's that very simple pedagogy of fostering learning by doing, learning from your peers, and then learning from experts. And that's what we do. And we're we hope we're not gremlins. At the core of what we do is working with instructors and taking all of their feedback and iterating in response to them and just trying our best to make their job easy so that they can increase the achievement level of their students, in particular attaining and or acquiring and retaining skills. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Dolly. I'm CEO and founder of GoGo Labs. We're a gamified education company based in Boise, Idaho. Our goal is to inspire students and engage educators as heroes of learning. We're interested in creating the same feelings of success that people feel when they play video games, and so they can feel that the same way in the classroom. I love learning. I'm a former professor and chair of a Department of Educational Technology at Boise State University, where we invented 3D Game Lab. It's the world's first fully gamified learning management system. I've crossed that innovator gap. It was a little painful. I'd be happy to talk to you about that experience away from here. But if you have interest in the idea of quest-based learning, leveling up, earning experience points, awards, badges. We've been heavily involved in the Mozilla Open Badges Initiative over the last year. Please come by our booth in the exhibit hall, and I'd love to talk with you more.
Great. So we don't actually have that much more time after this. So because there are so many of you, I really only want 2 people to respond to each of the questions. So I want you to move your water bottles towards you, and if you have something to say, put your water bottle out front, right? And I'll call on you. That'll be the best way to handle this, I think. So the first major question is kind of how do you work with partners? I think that most everybody in higher education has had experience with technology companies that is mind-blowingly bad. So the companies don't really listen. They don't iterate, and they're not so focused, so they make a lot of promises that they don't deliver on, right? And I won't name the bad guys, but as far as I know, it's almost everybody. So why don't you talk about how, as a startup, you have a process of working with your early customers, how you increase your iteration speeds so that you are actually more flexible and more responsive, and yet stay focused. Who's up? Okay, we got one. All right. The 2 on the end here. We've got Edu on Go and Collage.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, again, back to our focus is we really focus to individual teachers to launch their own online academies, and as a result of us promoting towards that, where we encourage them to put their own academies together and help them build the content, we've got a lot of traction around the world, which just last year we had over 1,000 academies created, and it ranges from a yoga academy to how to build a boat and how to a lot of technology, professional trainers, etc. Now, some of our successful partners, one of them is in Australia, that because of our mission and vision to tackle individual entrepreneurs or subject matter experts, they did partner with us to help them on vocational training in a chain of schools in Australia, which is called the Vet Track. Now, I want to mention these guys because they loved the vision and the tools so much, so they decided to invest in us. So they're our biggest investors so far. So I guess for us, our strategy to gain partnership around the world, which the next biggest partner we have is in Turkey, is through encouragement of entrepreneurship to subject matter experts to run their own online academy and provide quality education and make money through it. And we have been gained a lot of attraction from vocational training, professional training, so continuing education, I would say, in higher education. And believe it or not, there is a lot of professors flipping their courses at higher education using our system as well. And on top of it, we have a lot of group of teachers, subject matter experts, that partner together to launch their own MOOCs, the one that similar to the one that Michael mentioned earlier, Coursera, and so on. So.
Yep. You want to go?
So I have to say that one of the things that we work with 3 types of partners: customers, channel partners, as well as technology partners. And we pretty much have it down to a science thanks to an experienced team that we have and that has been doing this for several years, but still hands-on kind of team that still codes at night, right? We have boiled it down to 2 things. One is always look to build long-term partnerships, be it with customers, be it with channel partners or product partners. So don't try to do something that will jeopardize a relationship because you've promised something that you will give next week and you have not given, right? The other thing is always bring it down to a science from a product management perspective. Make sure that it is a product management exercise coupled tightly with engineering. So we have monthly release sprints that are coupled with every 3 months major releases. And in the monthly release sprints, we take in requests for the next month's sprint from customers or partners that are short-term requests. And for long-term requests, we always put it down to the next quarter's release. And that way we have it down to a science. And when requests come in terms of product requests from these product partners, we make sure that the partners are informed correctly in terms of time expectations of when those things are delivered to them. And we have a voting system internally that decides on the priorities of these requests. If a request is coming in from one customer, it's a nice to have. It's not really the most important feature. We do not get it done unless we have at least 3 votes for that particular feature. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, appreciate that. All right, so given the time constraints, we're going to dive straight into the questions I think the folks here today might be interested in, and I'm going to choose which most appropriate startup should respond. So the first is, how do we, as some vapid technology in the browser, sponsor deep learning and deep thinking? And I'd like Ponder and Apprenet to respond here.
How do we sponsor deep learning, or just
how do you facilitate a practice? That's one of the unbundled value propositions.
I see.
Yeah.
So that's something that we spent a lot of time with Ponder thinking about, and it's tricky. One of the kind of core tenets of current pedagogy is sort of inquiry-based or open-ended learning, and something that's sort of inherently complicated and maybe difficult to build an actual structure around, kind of by definition, right? If my students can go anywhere and read anything or have thoughts about any of those things to bring back to class, how do I build a foundation for them to do that on? And the answer traditionally has been to let students write stuff about it or have a class discussion. But that's a very binary way of addressing the challenge, and something that actually makes it very difficult. If I have no idea the context of the thoughts you're having around our assigned reading or our lessons, it's very difficult for me to respond substantively to what you're saying. So with Ponder, anyway, we've tried to, evolving over the last 3 years, working with our classes, create just enough of a framework around student thought process to push them a little bit harder when making their critical thoughts, and also to kind of categorize and aggregate, to be able to categorize and aggregate their thoughts for their instructors' feedback and guidance. That is a kind of a tricky balance, but something that, back to the sort of gremlin conversation, couldn't have come from anywhere but the classroom, and we've learned a lot from simply like the empirical experiences of our teachers and our students in the classroom, and that have been like iterating steadily on what that framework looks like. And be happy to talk more about it, but that's how we addressed it.
Thanks. So how did we address this facilitation of learning? We copied what we did in a law class. So my co-founder is a law professor, and how he helped the students develop these skills. He would give them an assignment, and he'd say, 2 weeks to do this. It was performance-based. They would go do it, so say draft an employment agreement. They would go do it. They'd come to class, and it had a really small class, 12 people. And 2 people would negotiate their contract, and the classmates would give feedback through a rubric, and then you'd have a discussion on each one. It was pretty rich. I was a student in the class, so I can attest to learning the skills this way. After that, we would go to a law firm, and we'd watch partners act out or demonstrate that same exact skill. And it was incredible because we were so engaged with it because we had performed that skill ourselves. We had engaged in peer review, and then we were ready to really be at a, not quite the same, but closer to the experts level so we could absorb those skills. And that's what we have done with ApprenNet. So we've given professors the tools to build those type of learning experiences online and be able to scale it for more than 12 students. So very quickly, how it works is a professor would post a video of some sort of real-world skill scenario. Students would upload a video response to it. So for health professional schools, give a patient bad news. They would upload a video practicing that skill. It would unlock the next stage where the students would see a set number of other students that have practiced that same skill, and they can give feedback through a rubric, free-form comment. This stage we need the most help on, so any thoughts would be helpful to how to foster that constructive feedback, good conversations about skills between peers or your students. And then that unlocks what you traditionally get first in education, which is the expert talking at you. The expert's video, whether it's you as a professor, or you can give a link to an outside practitioner to share their years of wisdom in a video. And those 3 steps are what we give those steps to professors to build those types of exercises to facilitate that deep learning or more critical skill thinking from your students.
All right. So the next one is, we went with deep learning. Let's go with deep motivation, right? How do we scaffold and structure continued motivation with students? And I think USEED and GoGo Labs have an interesting discussion here around game dynamics, maybe. Yeah.
So how many of you have played a video game on your phone in the last week? Could you raise your hand? Yeah, so if you look around the room, we know from research 99% of teens play video games, 66% of adults have played a mobile game in the last week. And so gaming is ubiquitous, it's everywhere, it's engaging. We know Jay McConigal says there's 4 things that makes, what is a game? What makes something a game? It's fun. Not always. A game has rules, it has goals, it has a feedback system. Education has all those things, so they overlay really nicely. The one thing that education doesn't have that games offer is games are voluntary. It's a critical component of engagement. And so one of our goals in GoGo Labs is how can we design the instructional experience so it feels voluntary to the student, so they have choice and so they want to engage in it. One of our approaches in our platform is that curriculum is nonlinear. Students are actually presented with a pool of quests. They choose among the quests. There's smaller bits of instruction every time they complete a quest. There's a ding, they're leveling up. They're always experiencing success in the learning process. And so the idea of student choice as a critical component of motivation and long-term engagement has really played out in the platform. We've taken the exact same curriculum that we can offer in Moodle or Blackboard. We'll chop it up into quests. We'll put it in 3D Game Lab, and we've had repetitive results of, in Moodle, we'll get 77% of students getting A's, and in our platform, 3D Game Lab, we'll get 96% of students earning A's. The most interesting piece of data it was a total shock to us that came out was that once students level up, let's say it takes 2,000 points to get an A in your course, 66% of students keep questing in the same course. We're fascinated by that. We're digging into why that's the case. But game dynamics truly do offer that ability to promote engagement.
So USEED is somewhat unusual in that we're really all about facilitating out-of-classroom experience. And we ask students to do something that everybody hates, which is to ask people for money, right? A typical crowdfunding campaign is going to raise between $5,000 to $25,000. Our average campaign raises about $10,000. So when we first started, what we learned from the data is that we weren't going to reach those numbers if people didn't feel good about asking other people to support them. And when we first started, our participation rate in our classroom, if you will, we provide online training on how to do this, was less than 15%. And it's now more than 90. And the reason that it's more than 90 is that we switched from looking for extrinsic motivators to intrinsic. The question that transformed our experience was, why are you doing this? What was interesting is most students were not asked that question as a regular part of their instruction, at least based on what they were telling us. Perhaps you all get them to start with why. It was incredible, the change that made, because it switched the conversation from asking people for money to sharing with them why you were really passionate about something and inviting them to be a part of it. And what was exciting is that they began to have these very authentic conversations with their community and became surprised about how many people they knew who cared about the same thing they did. They just never had the conversations. So how does this apply to our conversation, and why USEED is here? Jane McGonigal quoted a study. A bunch of kindergartners were put into a room, and there were crayons and papers laying out there. And for the next 20 minutes, they went nuts. The average kid made 5 drawings of a wide variety of colors and designs. That was the control group. The next group was brought in and offered a marshmallow for every picture that they made. The average student made 3 drawings. They were much less complex, and they really didn't exhibit a whole lot of creativity. We understand that the grading system is broken, but generally speaking, extrinsic motivation diminishes intrinsic motivation. And I think that's something that I feel comfortable saying now, and we've had a great conversation about, is learning does not need to be made into a game. It does not need gamification. Learning is a game. A game is learning. They're synonymous. What game designers look for is a sense of achievement. How many of us want to see our students feel a sense of achievement? Learning in and of itself is psychologically rewarding. You gain new skills. You gain greater freedom. Mastery is a fundamental motivation of human beings. So I think what we're really excited about, and using this word game dynamics, which we found some shared ground around, is it's not about tricking our students into doing what's good for them. It's about giving them a forum to express who they are. And look, online technologies have come a long way. There maybe wasn't a whole lot of room for intrinsic motivation in online learning or LMS systems in the past. But today, we all have the ability to say what is really causing our students to engage with this content, and how can we inspire the students who aren't feeling it to see it in others and be socially impacted by it, which is that second wave of intrinsic motivation. So I'll stop there.
Those are good comments. So it was something you touched on, Brian, which I'd like Emily from AppreNet to also comment on, is that online learning, I think, is a misnomer, right? That it doesn't mean that you're doing your learning in front of the computer. That, in fact, technology can inspire real-world experiences and facilitate and structure real-world experiences. And I was wondering, Emily, if you could start, but then Brian or anyone else to comment, how your technology actually isn't the product, right? How actually, like, you know, out of classroom, real world learning is in fact the product. Yeah.
So, how our technology is not the product? It's not the product. It's what the professor is putting in to spark the performance-based action or learning that the student's doing. That's what is the power of our platform. Our platform just helps you scale it. But it's really, what are you asking the students to think about, to practice? And then our technology just helps the students do that, but it does it in a way, so do you know the Socratic method? Where I would say, Michelle, can you answer that question? Stand up and answer it in front of the whole class. So it instills like stage fright, right? So that's what our technology does. It fosters that, and it gives teachers the power to scare their students into practicing skills because they know people are going to watch them. So Michelle won't stand up right now because you all are going to watch and judge her. And that's what we try to do, that, you know, give you a way to instill that fear for them to do the learning.
I'll try to keep my comments really brief on following up that. I don't think I can follow that. Learning is happiness. That's our core belief, right? It is though. Like you feel incredibly happy when you learn. It's like you can feel the neurons carving a new path through your brain. It is an experience, and I think that Michael's question is a pretty leading question, but I think it's a very exciting evolution in technology. We don't really care what the buttons look like or what the widgets are.
You shouldn't tell your investors that.
Right? That's not why we do those things, right? Making a beautiful product is nice. It is. We enjoy doing it. But what's way more beautiful is finding that tweak in the way you present information or the sequence or the tools even, and seeing how that shifts behavior, right? That's really what we're looking for, is it's about behavior design. So I think if we think about what is the experience that we're creating, not just are we creating a good customer experience, a good experience with the tool, but in this learning path, in this arc that a student is taking, are they feeling a sense of achievement as they're going through the process? Are they being served by the process? I'll give you an early mistake that we made. We gave students marching orders, and we said, if you do these 10 things, you will raise money, crowdfunding. And they're true, they're best practices. And what we ended up with is a bunch of students feeling like they were being dragged on a forced march. You know what's way more powerful than best practices? A group of people collaboratively solving a creative problem. And I think that redefining technology as enabling people's natural skill set around creative problem solving is the future of education technology.
So you had the opposite experience of Indiegogo, which is to train people how to use the platform is better?
I'll say this now, it's public information. Indiegogo's failure rates are 76%.
Oh, he knows.
Yeah. So I think that, we all know just giving people content isn't how you train them in a skill. And our success rate is over 90%.
Interesting. Happiness is marshmallows.
Also
learning
true.
is happiness, but marshmallows are not learning. Did I get that logic correct?
Well,
marshmallows are
for a
dangerous.
syllogism.
My takeaway from this is marshmallows are dangerous for children, especially. All right, so let's talk a little bit about brand, right? I think that there are two kind of ideas that are rapidly shifting in our learning ecosystem, right? So the first is that allowing instructors to just put stuff online is dangerous to an institutional brand, and that students seek out institutional brands rather than instructor brands, right? And I think there are a couple of you that have, you know, theories here that I think would be relevant. I know as you on Go, you probably have something to say here, and then if anybody else wants to step in, use your water bottle.
Yeah, so what we believe is in today's era, really the way that you gain knowledge has changed, where let's say you'd like to change the battery of an iPhone, the first thing you do is Google it. So having access to knowledge in a way that technology can help you achieve your goals is really, on the other side, teachers building their brand to provide a quality education. So what we've seen, at least in last year, 2013, out of the 1,000 academies that have been created at EDU on Go, that some of these academies have provided amazing education where their students were able to land into career jobs. And if you're able to do that as an individual entrepreneur or a group of teachers, then you're pretty much solving the formula of education. Is you providing quality education so your end students can gain skills and land into their career jobs. And now we do help our instructors, and we're hoping to recognize some of these educators to even be accredited in the future. We believe that you don't have to be a part of a branded institution to get quality education nowadays. You don't have to be a part of MIT to get quality education. And my background is in software engineering. I was a solution architect at Microsoft. I was a senior SDE at Amazon and a program manager at Disney. And majority of my engineers that I hired, they educated themselves to gain that quality skill. I'm not saying don't go to school or you don't get educated by the school, but the way that the traditional education is set up, we believe that technology and a product like EDU on Go can have a great impact on that.
So something that was brought up on Twitter and we had planned to discuss, and then I actually see one of my startup friends here, Crowdmark, in the audience. And Crowdmark is a way to scale complex grading, right? A way to scale grading complex work, basically. And somebody on Twitter, Rena, said, likes hearing that we understand the grading system is broken. And some of the commenters on Twitter talk about feedback systems as necessary for motivation, right? And how education's feedback systems are not strong enough yet, right? And I think that you guys have touched on this. Some of you have already touched on this, but those of you who haven't, how can we see technology driving human deep feedback, right? Not automated point systems, but like human deep feedback. Whoever. Water bottles, anybody? Yeah.
I'll just jump with the first thing. It's not hard. If feedback is authentic, it'll be human, useful feedback that feeds motivation and fuels a conversation. It doesn't have to be accurate. This is where I think, calling point systems and
is
those
human more important than accurate?
I do, yeah. I think dialogue is more important than accuracy when you're looking for improving someone's learning skills. Obviously, as teachers, we want to provide accurate feedback. We're trying to provide professional feedback, but you see peers give each other feedback, and it's not necessarily correct. But through the discourse, they evolve in their understanding. So I think we've reduced the word feedback to a very thin and flat. Look, neither grades, nor points, nor badges, none of these things are encompassing the richness of the possibilities of feedback. And as you pointed out, we have the ability through technology to encompass so many different kinds of feedback. It's about enabling feedback that accelerates learning. Please go ahead.
So I have a question on that part, and I would love if any of you all have answers to this. With fostering a dialogue that's very rich and constructive in the space of peer feedback. What we've noticed when we first built our peer review, the only way the peers could give feedback was observing and then free-form comments. And our commenting is not anonymous. So they know who it is. And it's in a closed group. It's usually with their classmates. Some of them are open, but mostly with their classmates. And so we measured or looked at all the feedback. It's always positive. It's not very constructive. It's always great job, you know, good job. So then we built a rubric grader because I wanted to try to figure out how can we help peers give more specific direct feedback so it's meaningful and they can redirect their learning. And we've done that last couple of months and we're still measuring it, but we're struggling with how do we make that dialogue more constructive.
What about just
the
the
peer
social
review.
construct of, hey, if I'm bad at this, then I'm not going to do well. Please be brutally honest so that I'm not in this situation. And you know, like creating a framework that says we're all going to give each other feedback with the goal of skill enhancement instead of encouragement, basically. Yeah.
Are you up? You can go. Yeah, I give you permission.
Totally agree with what you're saying, Emily. And I think it's not necessarily just about honesty. I think that you know, we take it for granted that that feedback is sort of something that we all have to give, but in fact, it's something that the better structured that it is, and the more that there is a framework for it. A rubric could be one part of that, but also just the way to articulate the different types of feedback is something that's you actually have to get good at, and something that's a skill you need to develop. And a big piece of a common misconception with Ponder when we're working with teachers is they often ask where the discussion is happening in Ponder. And in Ponder, actually the discussion happens in your class, in the synchronous time in your class. What's happening in Ponder is that framing, that preparation, where we're trying to help scaffold students into critiquing each other's thoughts and in critiquing the course's thoughts in such a way that the quality of discussion, the quality of feedback that happens in your classroom will be better. And it's absolutely true that, you know, this sort of free-form text comments to one another tends to be very banal and very not very constructive.
Very pleasant.
Very, very pleasant.
Everyone's so nice.
All right, so on Twitter we have a guy whose work I read a lot, George Siemens, saying that that we need to focus our discussion a little more on product, right? So we actually get to be in the weeds on making design decisions about where the button goes and, like, you know, how to phrase it and what the interaction design is. One of the practices that we have at Learn Capital, a practice is when you categorize investments and put a bunch of ideas behind them. In the investment community, by the way. It's called inscriptive media. Inscriptive media. It's the idea that you can design new forms of media that inherently have learning advantages. Where spending time with that form of media is more intellectually rewarding, stimulating, and there's more learning efficiency. And, you know, YouTube is not the end-all of learning media. Video is not the end-all of learning media. And I was wondering if you could comment, Collage and then Ponder in particular, right, about how you can bring pedagogy into interaction design with media.
That's a good question. Made me think a bit. You know, as I said, our vision is to make it easy for people to create rich content, right? And rich content is not the end of story. Like you said, if you create a video, the video has to be easily viewable, understandable, and it has to be surrounded with a whole bunch of context that essentially adds metadata that makes people easily walk through it and understand the background behind that video. So, and our focus so far has been around making it easy to, first of all, create that rich content, but one of the things that we've been making a conscious effort on, and this is an ongoing effort, we have some parts of it in the product, some parts of it we're continuing to work on, is to almost make it Instagram-like in terms of adding metadata and context to these videos. So for example, one of the things that we realized was people were, using, ancient tools, trying to spend a lot of time trying to make that video look pretty, by adding titles to it, credits to it, things like that. And we've done some really cool things that make it extremely easy for the user there, so that they really don't have to spend any time doing anything around that. But I think truly, if these videos were to be embedded in your LMS or in other contexts where other metadata is added to these videos nicely and easily, that's where I think a lot of the learning will come from.
So it's actually a great comment. Ponder started out focused entirely on text, and in the past, I'd say year, we started getting more and more requests about video, and we obviously don't help people create content. We kind of manage more the student relationship with that content.
We can help you with that.
We help with this sort of student engagement with that content and the instructor management of that experience and the discussions that ensue. A common, or one of the best lines that I've read recently, we spent a lot of the last year doing research and kind of focus grouping our new video tool, which allows students to do much the same thing that they do on text, except with video. And we initially took the tack that a common reaction of instructors is, I give my students a video to watch, hopefully they watch it, but it feels very passive, and it's not clear to me that just watching a video, you kind of get what you need out of it to bring to class something for discussion. And so we've been kind of grappling with this, like how do we change video, or what do we build to video, or what content do videos need to have to make them dense enough or engaging enough to really drive discussion the way that a text can. And one of the lines in kind of researching where this stuff comes from that I really like about literacy is that literacy is actually a skill, is the skill to learn something out of context. It's not necessarily about the medium of that information, whether it's a video or a text, but it's how can I learn something when we're not having that authentic in-person conversation or discussion or questioning or discourse. That's really, really hard. Transforming video into kind of an active learning experience has been something that actually we initially hoped would just be us migrating over our text product onto video, and it's turned out to be much, much more than that. And we've kind of changed some of the interface tools to just the watching process, not the, our tool is a lot about attaching critical thoughts to points in a text or points in a video. It's almost like an annotation of type of annotation. But actually the interface, what does it look like? What are the dog ears of video? And, what are the, when you're reading a book and you suddenly realize you have no idea what happened in the last couple pages, what does that look like in video, and how do we help students manage that watching experience? Something that has been much harder than we expected. And has required a lot more learning from the classroom and kind of soaking that up. I don't think we're quite there yet with, making videos an effective kind of lecture alternative. Even there's something about a lecture that has more to it, and I think some combination of the video creation process and the video consumption process, those innovations will slowly get us there. But I think only with the help and support of the classrooms that are using it and kind of trying to think about how those videos can augment your lessons and not so much concern around them replacing them. There's no question from our perspective at Ponder that synchronous discussion time is essential to all the subjects that we see Ponder being used with. So don't worry about those videos replacing your lectures anytime soon.
Right. I'd like to just add one more thing to that.
I'm going to ask you a question, you in specific, actually.
Yes, please.
So George still isn't happy. So I was thinking that we were being audience appropriate by focusing on pedagogy, but some of the back channel seems to think that they're a lot more expert at this than we are, so maybe we should focus on what it means to run a technology company. And given your experience prior to Collage as a technology, as a veteran technology entrepreneur. I was wondering if you could maybe comment about how the technology stack that we use as entrepreneurs has changed and facilitated basically like faster iteration speed and better service for customers.
Oh yeah, I mean that's something I'm
And all the legacy companies aren't on new technology stacks?
No, I mean there's a back to one of the points that I think Red One was making, which is learning that happens in school when you get your degree changes so dramatically. Now with the technology landscape is changing so dramatically. It's important to keep learning new things all the time, right? So just because you have a school degree doesn't mean you're done with learning. I mean, you come back 2 years later, something has changed, especially in the tech landscape. Things are changing so fast. 10 years ago, 8 years ago is when I built my first company. This was an enterprise company. We were doing desktop virtualization, which eventually was acquired by Citrix in 2011, after which I started Collage. There, I remember writing Windows drivers myself in my garage. When we bought a home, my wife said, "Can we remodel the kitchen?" I said, "No, can we do the garage first?" And I'm glad she's still with me. Things have changed so much from that day now to Amazon, making it so easy from a back-end perspective. Anybody can just get websites up and running like that, right? And it's just not plain text websites. These are intelligent applications, complex things that you can get up and running very quickly. And it's not just a matter of prototyping those applications. You can actually scale those applications significantly across multiple regions and geographies very, very easily. And that's what is available to new age entrepreneurs that was not available 10 years ago, which actually I think significantly explains why the rate of innovation or the rate of startup formation is so high these days. Right? Anybody can try out anything very quickly.
Yeah. All right, we're about to move to questions, and I'd like you to kind of, all of you as we answer audience questions, to maybe tie this in, right? Which was we had some Twitter feedback or back channel feedback as well, and it plays to what I wanted to be the last question, which is in my liberal arts education, we had to read this book, Orientalism, right? And there was this concept of Orientalism, which was about taking very heterogeneous groups of people and essentially thinking of them homogeneously, right? And being able to, as a policy, not be able to differentiate between different populations, right? And I think that when people think about online learning, they think about it homogeneously. And that when people think about instructional tools, they tend to think only about an LMS and like which LMS are you using. So the like most active conversation in many higher education facilities, unfortunately, is are we going to use Blackboard or are we going to use Canvas, right? Which is not, of course, the end all to product discussion. So I'd like, at least one or two of you to answer now, what is your actual real differentiation between people we would want to lump you in with, right? Like, of the things that make you different, what differentiates you from them even, right? So if one or two could take a crack at that, and then we'll move to questions and answers, and the rest of you can kind of scatter that into your answers.
I'd like to go first. Okay.
Sure.
So basically, when we build our product, we focused a lot on the teacher and student relationship comparing to focusing on the IT department of a school. We brought in, which will tie up to the previous question, is we brought in social networking tools inside each classroom, much like a Facebook wall, where students can comment, add a media, and others can like it and answer others' questions, much like in a Facebook kind of environment. And we saw that very useful, where a lot of our students picked up so fast because they are so much used to Facebook and LinkedIn and such social networking tools. In addition, we also brought in a lot of collaborative tools when watching a video, which I was going to add what our colleagues were saying earlier, where we brought in tools where you can leave notes in the timeline. So if you are at minute 1.1, you can actually ask a question at that minute, and it will create a track on the timeline of the video. And if your classmates knew the answer or would like to comment to that note, it will start a thread right in that note, in that track. So as others watch the same video, they can see the video on the left side, and they can see everybody's notes at a particular time on the right side, and they can see the collaboration or the discussion around that question or note. One last thing that I would like to mention, there's a ton of other tools that we build around this, is when you read a book, we, in addition to building a very intuitive book composer where our teachers actually compile their own books, we made it available so students can simply select text or media around the book and share their notes with each other, just like on a traditional kind of a book where we write notes on the side. And if we would like to share those notes with each other and discuss a specific section of a chapter, you can do that. And the instructor can actually select text throughout the chapter and create questions for students to be, it will become a study guide for them. So we added a lot of collaborative tools on top of what students are really used to nowadays.
Thanks. We're going to have to move to questions. I really thank all of you for your very engaging and thorough responses. Does anybody in the audience have questions for these entrepreneurs, their technology? We've got somebody over here. Can you raise your hand again? Yeah. Yeah, I can, but can you use the mic?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I have a quick question is that how old is your companies? The second related question is that how many percentage of your employees are educators?
Our company is about 1.5 years old, and the majority of our employees are educators. We run about 15 employees a month, and about 12 of those are educators.
We're 2.5 years old, and there's 7 of us. One's in instructional design, I was a teacher, and one's a law professor, and the other guys are tech.
2.5 years, and we're 50% educators. There's 6 of us.
2 years and 3 months, and we're 12 people. Majority of us are in tech because it requires a lot of hard work from a tech perspective to build a lecture capture application. But we have surrounded ourselves with solid educators. The CIO of the Graduate School of Business at Stanford is on the advisory board, who we meet with on a periodic basis. And we do have a couple of other execs in the tech world, in the education world, that help us out.
None of us have degrees in education, but I sure hope that all of us are educators. We're 2 years old.
We're about 2 years old. I am a professor at university level. I've been teaching for 7 years. We have PhD graduates working for us. We are 14 full-timers. That's it.
Even though I'm in the venture capital seat, I don't consider myself in finance. I consider myself an educator. Anyone else? Sorry, there were a few other hands I think that went up. Anyone?
There's one over there.
Way over there.
Up, yep.
A few years ago, I discovered, by happenstance, a very cool tool. It was kind of a little widget builder that had a lot of potential, and I was using it for a while. And then, poof, it was gone. I basically got an email saying, essentially, that they discovered that small people like me were there's no money in that, so we're not going to focus on that, and you might as well export everything you've done. I know there's probably no way to predict that. I mean, but yeah, how how do I know if I get myself involved in any of you, that you're still going to be around in 6 months?
Yeah. That actually was going to tie into kind of my last question, which is the opposite. You know, I think educators are particularly scared of a startup dying, right? And your number one objective as a startup is to not to die. Paul Graham famously said, your inspiration as a startup should be a cockroach, because cockroaches can live through a nuclear winter. So there's a concern of you dying, or a concern of you pivoting out of the solution that works for them. And then there's also this kind of strange idea that startups are meant to, that your chief objective is to make a lot of money, right? I have a friend who did well by Facebook, and every time he kind of blows money, he calls them Zuck Bucks. And the startup, the Facebook movie, you know, notoriously, what's cooler than $1 million? $1 billion. So, so we're scared you're going to die, but we're also scared you're here to make $1 billion. And I'm wondering if you kind of explain how you're not actually making any money right now, but you're still not going to die.
I'd like to answer that question.
Yes, please.
Very blatantly, my salary last year was $29,000. Being a former professor, making more than that, it was pretty painful, but that's what I lived through last year. I worry about, you know, as a CEO, how long are we going to be around? You're only around as long as you have customers that are willing to pay for you. And so I can't answer for these other companies. My own emergency backup plan, you know, if all else fails. I have comfort in knowing that we're a university spin-out. We're Boise State's first spin-out, and so they take a lot of pride in that. They're not going to let the company fail. We've got a nice backup plan, and that's the only answer I have for myself. But it's a definite concern and question that is very reasonable.
Yeah, yes, please.
Sorry. So I don't think we'll die, because we've had very good traction. So 25% of the law schools like us and are using us. So that's good. And then we're also doing this Robinhood strategy, where a number of corporations use us for corporate training. It's the same product, it's just the pedagogy, and they pay us a little more, and so we can offer it to schools very cheap, and they'll keep us alive.
I like that. Robin?
Yeah.
Robinhood pricing. It'll be a new investment strategy.
I could go probably. I've been asked the same question many, many times, and as Michael said, it's a hard question to answer for any startup, right? Because it's you are really trying to work hard to get your customers. At the same time, cash is limited, and that's life for a startup. In the past, what we've done, and my previous company was a venture-funded company, so it was very easy to say, oh, we were backed by NEA, or and so it was easy to win the trust of companies like Morgan Stanley or people that want to do complex, large deployments. But regardless of where your funding comes from, I think you're seeing us here get some traction. You're seeing us here because the companies that are sitting here, at least, I would like to say, cream of the crop, right? Would that be the right word to use?
Yeah. We were very inspired by your trajectory of not dying.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. We thought you were quality enough to make it. Yeah.
So there's some level of credibility that we've so far attained, both in our with our past work as well as what we're doing with this current company, and that has won us some customers, some accolades, and some partners, some really credible partners, which is why we hope and we think we will not die, right? And we're here to support the customers for a longer time. The other side, question about what is cooler than $1 million, $1 billion, right? I think a lot of us in this room are of course, money is a great thing for startup entrepreneurs, but that's not what drives us. That is more of a consequence than the act of building a startup, right? And we do this because we love it. We do this, we're not here to, we don't love taking huge pay cuts and moving away from comfortable jobs and doing this because we're masochists. I mean, we just love working on cool new things that solve new problems.
You know, I heard something in your question that came across a little differently to me. You know, it's a pretty common feeling amongst users of feeling abandoned by the startups that they trust with their time and their energy. And I think there's two things that I'd suggest about, you know, rather than sort of worrying about two things you can't control, which is, you know, will this startup die or will this startup leave me? Startups coming to you for your input, for your, you know, to be an early adopter, to be a visionary, to help them understand things. You have the ability to, you know, be an experienced customer with them. You can push back on what their motivations are. Why are they in this? What are they in it for? And do you feel that that motivation really aligns with you spending time with them? And the second is, it's perfectly fine for you to push back on their business model. Most startups just need to get customers to try things, to figure things out. And it's okay for you to ask them, you know, do you have an idea of how this is going to make money? Because frankly, most ed tech startups really struggle to figure out a revenue model. To answer the question specifically about us, we launched our beta 9 months ago and we have over $500,000 in revenue. We're break even. My belief, it's not necessarily everyone's belief, but my belief is that a company's job is to survive so they can continue to innovate, and the way to do that is to be break even in your revenue. You don't have to be profitable, but you have to be able to float your own boat. So everyone has a different strategy, and you can see what you want to bet on. I also think that you can take pride in something. You know, someone asked Sergey, the founder of Google, if he only had one piece of advice to give, what would it be? And he said, find a really tough problem and try to solve it. You know, I'm not a participant in the narrative of magical technology. You know, Instagram was one of thousands of startups trying to figure out how to get people to share photos with each other. And we're talking about the evolution of a person. So I think that one of the things I'd invite you to look at this is you're placing bets with your time on how you can help evolve a profession that you love. And if you find people that you feel you can learn a lot from, and you feel that what they're trying to do is worthwhile, then go for it. I think everyone here will tell you, but you know, it's part of the entrepreneur narrative. You know, Steve Jobs did Apple because he was in love with design. I do what I do because I'm in love with the idea of people finding their authentic voice and being able to express that community and that aha moment when the community surrounds them and encourages them. This is why we put our lives on the line to do these things. Money is just a way to increase the impact that we want to make. So, you know, we're a certified B Corp. That's one way we signal that. We understand the conversation of social entrepreneurship is uncomfortable, but I think if you can find your, you know, of course use your judgment, but I think generally you're going to find that inventors and innovators are motivated by something much more significant than what the payout will be 10 years later when they still don't have a house and they've had to figure out how to put their kids through private school with half the salary they could get otherwise, right? So that's what we're talking about, and we're deeply grateful that you take the bets on us that you do.
Okay, I'll try to make it quick. Yeah. So,
yeah, quick. We have to wrap up.
It's all right. So as a company, we have about last year we had about 325K in revenues. This year we're on track to get 2 million revenues. We have some key companies that depend on our technology, which range above $100 million in their revenues. So because of them, I believe that we're going to be in the business for some times. But as to the individual entrepreneur or the end user, with ED-on-Go, you have the ability to host your own IP on either your Google Drive or other storage. You also have the ability to export all of your courses and keep them local or transfer them to a different environment.
Okay. Yeah, we need to wrap up here. Time constraint, and the Twitter back channel seems to be all about going to get coffee. So, reading the room and reading the back channel, it seems we need to be wrapping up. I want to thank all of the courageous entrepreneurs up here and all of the courageous entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs out in the audience. I hope you enjoyed your breakfast and look forward to the day ahead.
Thanks so much.
much. I have just a few quick announcements. Thank you, first of all, to National Diamond Sponsor Academic Partnerships for sponsoring this morning's special breakfast presentation by Michael Staten and the Launchpad Plenary panel. A reminder to read the daily update email that hits your email box late each evening during the conference. Important program updates and other announcements are included in that email. If you haven't purchased a ticket for today's awards luncheon, you may still purchase one at the conference walk-in registration desk. It's a really great lunch, and tickets are $15 for attendees. And finally, you may still sign up for tonight's dine-around if you're interested. If you'd like to do that, please sign up at the conference registration tables by 12 o'clock noon today. Dine-around groups will meet at 6:30 p.m. this evening in the hotel lobby and depart from there. Sloan C. and Merlot staff will be there with maps and instructions to gather groups and send you off on your way to your evening dinners.
Michelle, are you concluded?
Yes.
I was hoping you could join us in taking a group selfie.
Oh, yeah.
As a way to conclude this panel.
That'd be fun.
And if you guys want to take selfies out there in the audience and post them, just hashtag launchpad, hashtag selfie. Yeah? All right, have a great day.
Enjoy, everybody.